Fortnite's first chapter. Get your best wolf face on with Beta Rising by Wattpad star Graham Bauer.
My love is like a flower, I'm trying to get you over. You like love sour, then you should come try my poison.
Welcome to First Chapters, where I literally read the first chapter from books on Wattpad. These are generally books written by my author friends since they tend to be more agreeable and open to trying new things. I do occasionally get asked to read other books, so a few might pop up every now and again. So why the first chapter? Because I'm not about to sit and read someone's entire book on YouTube. There's some whole copyright issues there. And besides, face it, it's a lot of work. But the other thing is that you can tell a lot from a first chapter, way more than from a synopsis. So this is what we're doing. If you want a review, there are plenty of other channels for that, so please go check them out. Disclaimer time. This is usually my first time or second time reading, so you get to hear all of my mistakes since it's on camera. Every single mistake. I'm your host, Rodney V. Smith, Watty Award-winning author of The Kingfield Killer, which is available on Wattpad Page Stories. And now it's time to get into another first chapter. In a divided world where alphas are born to rule while betas are doomed to serve, a closeted gay jock is denied his birthright and joins a queer rebel collective to bring down the system that betrayed him. The mayor's son, captain of the gridball team and a high school heartthrob, there was never any question that Dane Hasler would follow in his family's footsteps and join the ruling alpha caste. Dane's dreams are shattered come graduation day when his test results reveal he's a beta. Shunned by family and friends, he's forced to undergo genetic correction therapy that leaves him disfigured and disabled. Broken, penniless, and homeless, Dane struggles with life on the streets until he meets Effie, a former classmate who offers him the chance to exact revenge on the system that cheated him of his inheritance. He finds happiness and love as part of a collective of freewheeling rebel fighters, but Effie isn't telling Dane everything, and he's about to experience the greatest betrayal of all. Let's get into Chapter 1. Chapter 1. The List. I was a monumental jackass who deserved all the shit coming my way. Every last sputter. Dane Hasler, that's me, alpha through and through. The mayor's son, most popular guy in school, captain of the varsity gridball team, with a rock-hard six-pack and a smile that would make a dentist swoon. Sorry, my lane is on a bit thick. Like I said, jackass. I used to do all kinds of dumb stuff back then, mostly just to get a laugh from my A-bros, Zach and Ash. We loved tormenting the betas. It was our thing. Sky City's... It's hard to say. Sky City High was an integrated school. Kids from alpha and beta families were all mixed in together. It was supposed to be fairer that way. But it just pissed me off. Why should I share the same air as a bunch of stinking betas? So naturally, I took every opportunity to remind them who was boss. That's actually how this whole thing started. It didn't seem like such a big deal at the time, but it set in motion a chain of events that would lead to my downfall. Graduation was three days away. If I had just kept my head down for 3 lousy days, none of this would have happened, but I was never any good at self-control. On that fateful night, I was lying alone in my bedroom with the lights low down. No, I wasn't doing what you were thinking. I was too busy obsessing about betas. I grabbed a pen and paper and made a list of all the losers at my school. Technically, we didn't get assigned alpha or beta status until we took the alphabet test on graduation day, but I could always smell a beta. Or so I thought. Once I started writing, I couldn't stop. The names just flowed from my pen, every one of them I believed with all my heart to be a worthless piece of trash. By the time I finished, half the years in my year were on it. Don't ask me why I wrote it. It's not like I planned on sharing it with anyone. Not at first anyway. It just felt therapeutic to get it all done on paper. It was late by the time I finished. I put the pen and paper on my bedside table and fell fast asleep. That night, I slept the blissful, undisturbed sleep of someone with no doubts or anxieties. Someone who knew their place in the world. Someone predestined to greatness. When I woke up the following morning, my mind was set on one thing. Stirring up some shit. Graduation day was rapidly approaching and tensions were running high at Sky City High. The place was a powder keg that could explode at any moment, and I knew my list was just the spark I needed to set it off. Everyone was freaking out about the alphabet test. For the kids from alpha families, failure meant being torn from their loved ones and doomed to a life of servitude. For beta kids, passing was a chance to ascend to Sky City and actually make something of themselves. They all disgusted me. If there was one thing I hated more than the stench of a beta, it was the smell of fear. It brought out my aggressive side, and that's why I decided to share my list with the entire school. If I posted it anonymously, kids might assume it was official, and they'd lose it when they saw their name down with all the other garbage. Their reactions would be priceless. It was the perfect kiss-off to end my time at that shithole they called a school. For my plan to work, I had to get moving. I checked my alarm clock. No time for a shower. I leaped out of bed, pulled on my clothes, grabbed the list, and raced out of the house. I lived with my family in the mayor's residence, a palatial building on one of the tallest towers in Sky City. The cold morning breeze messed with my hair as I ran across the sky bridge that led to the school. Overnight clouds had left the ground damp and slippery. Sky City was a gleaming, pristine metropolis built on ancient towers known as skyscrapers. They were interconnected by sky bridges, so alphas could move between them without ever having to descend to the filthy squalor of ground city below. Betas were allowed up to do their jobs, cleaning up our shit. But then they had to scurry back down to where they belonged. I got used to the stench of betas from an early age because my family had so many servants, cooks, butlers, valets, security guards, drivers, you name it. But nothing prepared me for the reek of all the beta kids in Sky City High. Truth is, I probably smelled worse than the lot of them. As you may have noticed, my personal hygiene wasn't that great, but then I thought the sun shone out of my ass. The other kids were lucky to smell me, the alluring, musky scent of a purebred alpha. The school was deserted when I arrived. No bad smell just yet. I walked the empty corridors, past the lockers, and up to the school notice board. Teachers often pin lists there, mostly exam results, gridball rosters, and that sort of thing. But my list was different. It didn't have a title to explain what it was, just a bunch of names on an otherwise blank sheet of paper. Checking carefully to make sure no one was watching, I pinned it right in the middle of the board. Then I took a step back and waited in the shadows. I didn't have to wait long. As students began to arrive, a crowd soon gathered around the list. What's this? Why's my name down? Is this for the alphabet? I couldn't help smirking when I heard those snowflakes scrapping their pants. They'd already figured it out. Wasn't my fault their feelings were hurt. They were inferior. Physically, mentally, in every way. It was so obvious the list didn't even need a title. Deep down, they already knew the truth. At this point, you're probably thinking I'm some kind of a psycho, but this is just how I was raised. The alpha-beta system was more fragile than it appeared. It took a lot of fuel to sustain, and that fuel was fair. Every alpha had a responsibility to keep the betas scared shitless. That's how we preserved the peace, for the benefit of all. I was just doing my bit. As more students arrived, the crowd grew and the nervous chatter got louder. Everyone was so desperate to check if the name was on the list that none of them noticed me watching with a shit-eating grin. Except for Effie Coulson, that is. Tall and athletic, with intelligent eyes and a wide smile, it was hard to believe Effie came from a beta family. She was standing motionless in the middle of the jostling crowd, staring straight at me. Instinctively, I looked down. I looked away. Damn, that was such a beta move. What the hell was I thinking? When I looked back, she was still staring. There was something accusatory about her gaze, like she knew I'd written the list. But how? Effie came from a long line of betas, and there was no reason to imagine she'd turn out any different from the rest. That's why I'd included her name on the list, along with all the other betas in waiting. The alphabet was in 2 days' time, and then I'd never have to see her ugly face again. Unless, of course, she was washing my jock strap or mixing my protein shakes. My stare-off with Effie was interrupted by the arrival of my A-bro, Zach. "Yo, Digwad! What's with the list?" "What list?" I acted all innocent. "The Betty list!" I couldn't help smiling. "Oh no, you didn't!" Zach burst out laughing. "This was you! That's dope!" He slapped me on the back. Zach was still howling when my other dog made an appearance. "Hey ladies, what's up?" Dash gave us both a dab. "You seen the Betty list, bro?" Zach was still breathless from laughing. "Betty list? You mean betas?" Ash sounded nervous. "Over there! Check it out!" The color drained from Ash's face. He wasn't purebred like me and Zach. His parents were first-generation alphas, and he still had family in Ground City, a fact we never let him forget. "Am I on it?" he asked nervously. "Nah, you're safe." Zach rolled his eyes. Ash regained his dignity with a quick comeback. "Are you?" Zach started laughing again, clicking his fingers like it was the best joke he'd ever heard. "If I were on it, it'd be a fucking VIP list!" "Silence!" Principal Albert C. Grant stood at the end of the corridor, his hands balled into fists planted firmly against his hips. Sunlight streamed in from the open doors behind him, silhouetting his hefty frame. The nervous chatter ended abruptly, and all eyes turned to Grant's imposing figure as he marched down the hallway, his footsteps echoing on the tiled floor. The crowd looked away, making way. The crowd scattered, making way as he approached the notice board. Grant took so long reading my list that I actually thought he might be pissed, but when he finally looked up, he was grinning. I think he even recognized my handwriting because he gave me a sly wink, a secret sign of respect from one alpha to another. "What is it, sir?" a sweaty beta kid stammered nervously. Principal Grant turned on him like a predatory wolf. He replied in a menacing growl, "Quit acting like a Betty and get to class!" The beta kids didn't wait to be told twice. They darted off in all directions like vermin. With a contemptuous grunt, Principal Grant dug his fists into his pockets and strode off. The corridor was silent now, except for a quiet tapping. I turned to see Effie Colston jabbing her finger at the list. "What's this?" she demanded, looking straight at me. "What do you think?" If she was offended that her name was down there, she didn't show it. In fact, she didn't say anything. She just stared at me, and I stared right back this time, alpha style. Then she walked over to me, standing so close I could feel her breath on my face. She hesitated for a moment, before pushing past me and stalking off down the corridor, her footsteps echoing like Principal Grant's. "What the fuck?" I shouted after her. Zach and Ash both jeered, but I ignored them. Effie didn't give a flying fuck what anyone thought, and I admired that. It was rare to see a beta displaying such alpha qualities. Maybe I even had a bit of a crush on her, which was weird because Effie was so not my type. "You got pwned by a Betty! Later, loser!" Zach shoved me aside just like Effie had, but I was too dazed to react. I knew I had to watch him. Zach was always jostling to be top dog, and now he'd seen Effie dissing me like that. He probably thought I was a soy boy beta cuck. He needed setting straight, but that would have to wait. I had to get to class. With only 2 days left of school, classes seemed pretty pointless. It wasn't like we'd learn anything that would help with alphabet, and I didn't think I needed help anyway. Still, I had to go through the motions. My mom was the mayor, so I was supposed to set an example. At least truth class would be a breeze. Mr. Adams was the most useless teacher on the planet. He usually just played us old movies for the entire lesson. I'd seen today's movie many times before. It was all about wolves. They'd been extinct for over a century. Probably all got nuked during the war. But we still studied wolf packs in truth class because they provided a clue to the origins of the alpha-beta system. Pack animals like wolves and humans form a natural Pack animals like wolves and pack animals like wolves. Hello there, how are you doing? Pack animals like wolves and humans form a natural hierarchy. Alphas are born to rule, while betas exist only to serve. It has always been this way. The movie droned on, featuring grainy footage of wolves fighting. They were surrounded by trees and the ground was covered in snow. A snarling alpha was literally tearing the limbs off a cowering beta. This beta is too weak to serve the pack and is eliminated by natural selection. This is such bullshit, Effie groaned. She was sitting at the back of the class, wearing her usual resting bitch face. My dear, this is truth class, Mr. Adams replied angrily as he paused the movie. Truth my ass. There were no alphas or betas in wolf packs. That's a myth. An audible gasp rose from the class. Effie's words were treason. Mr. Adams got up from his desk, walked slowly to the back of the classroom, and leaned over her desk. Betas should know their place. Where's that? Over your knee getting spanked? Effie jutted her chin forward provocatively. If necessary, yes. He turned to address the whole class. The alpha's burden is to preserve the social order for the common good. If Miss Coulson had paid more attention in truth class, she'd know that by now. Effie scoffed, but said nothing. Mr. Adams returned to his desk and restarted the movie. He was a weak and pathetic old man. All that talk about the alpha's burden, and he still hadn't punished Effie. I could tell from the smug expression on her face that she knew she'd won. My eyes began to glaze over as I watched the snow turning progressively red on the screen. But then something caught my eye. Behind the wolves was a wire fence. How had I never noticed that before? Maybe these wolves weren't as wild as they seemed. Maybe Effie was right. I turned to look at her and she scowled back at me. It was then I knew. Effie was an alpha. When the class was finally over, I went straight back to the list and crossed out her name. I was so preoccupied I didn't notice she'd followed me and was watching as I did it. Pushing me aside, she produced a pen from her pocket and scrawled something at the bottom of the list. Then she turned to me and said quietly, The great thing about being a beta is we get to spit in your food before we serve you. I took a closer look at what she'd written. 2 letters, F-E, Effie. She'd added her name back onto the list. Then I noticed something scrawled beneath it, a symbol I'd never seen before. It looked like the letter B, but with an arrow pointing up. Effie wandered off down the corridor before I could reply. I didn't know it then, but from that point on, there was a target on my back, and it would change my life forever. End of chapter 1. If you like what you just heard, you can continue reading more of the book on Wattpad by following the link in the description. You can also follow on social media. That's all for tonight, so thanks for joining. Don't forget to click the like button down there. Don't forget to click the like button down there and subscribe if you want to listen to me read some more first chapters. I try to update 5 days a week and there's always something new. So, see you around. Happy reading.
And ever since then, my lying eyes are deceived.